So today in class we started talking about our properties of exponents, and some of these may seem familiar to you because you did introduce these in Algebra 1. And today we talked about product of powers, power of a power, and quotient of powers. So if you look down here, product of powers says when two powers with the same base are multiplied, the exponents are added. So if you have a to the m times a to the n, we can simplify that by doing a to the m plus n. What you need to remember is when you're multiplying powers, you do not multiply the base numbers. So for example A, we've got 3 to the third times 3 to the second. That would really be the same as 3 to the fifth, which is equal to 243. Now remember, the word evaluate means get this down to one number answer. You can actually find the answer to these. Okay? Example B, 9 to the third times 9 to the negative first is really the same thing as 3 plus negative 1, or 9 squared, which we can then evaluate as 81. Now in this example down here, negative 6 times negative 6 to the fourth, remember, if there is no exponent shown, we assume it's a 1. And so this would really be the same thing as negative 6 to the fifth power, which comes out to be negative 7,776. When you are simplifying means get the answer as simple as possible. And basically what that means as far as variables is you should only have one of each variable left at the end. So x squared times x to the fourth is just going to be x to the sixth. When you have multiple variables, you just do each one separately. This means we have x to the first. So x squared times x to the first would give me x to the third. Y to the fourth times y to the sixth gives me y to the 10th. Now on example C, when you look at this, the 3 and the 4, those are coefficients, not exponents, so they should not follow these rules. You're just going to do what the problem says, and this is a multiplication problem. So we really are just going to do 3 times 4, which will give me 12, and then you'll add your exponents of your common variables. X to the third times x to the fourth is x to the seventh, and y to the second times y to the eighth is y to the 10th. Now our second rule we talked about today is called the quotient of powers. When it is a division problem, this is when you subtract your exponents. So example A, again where it says evaluate, 11 to the 8th divided by 11 to the 6th is just going to be 11 to the 2nd, which is equal to 121. Notice it says when dividing powers, do not divide the bases. Subtracting the exponent is taking care of the division for you. You don't also need to divide. 3 to the 8th divided by 3 to the 4th is just 3 to the 4th, which is 81. Simplifying is the same way. Just make sure you end up with one of each variable at the end. X to the 6th divided by x to the 2nd is just going to be x to the 4th. Now x to the 3/4 divided by x to the 1/2, just remember with fractions that you do have to have a common denominator. So the first thing I would need to redo is I would need to rewrite the 1/2 as 2/4 so that I could actually do the subtraction, and my final answer would be x to the 1/4. Now, just like with the problem on the side before, when you have coefficients, you do what the problem says. This is a division problem. Now, since 4 divided by 24 won't come out nicely, we're just going to think about that as reducing a fraction. I'm going to reduce to 1/6. X to the 4th divided by x to the 2nd leaves me with x to the 2nd. Y to the 5th divided by y to the negative 5th. 5 minus negative 5 will go to 5 plus 5, which will give you y to the 10th. The last rule we covered today is power of a power, and this is when you have a power raised to an exponent. And this is where you are going to multiply your exponents. 3 to the 2nd to the 3rd is really the same thing as 3 to the 6th, which would be 729. Negative 4 to the 3rd to the 2nd is really negative 4 to the 6th, which is 4,096. 3 to the 1/2 to the 4th, well, 1/2 times 4 is half of 4, which is 3 squared, which is 9. We're actually going to skip this one. We'll talk about that tomorrow. Simplifying is the same way. X to the negative 2nd to the negative 7th becomes x to the positive 14th. X to the 4th times x to the 3/4, when you simplify, becomes just x to the 3rd. And that's where we stop today. And the worksheet is on Blackboard. You are going to look for Chapter 5, Exponent Worksheet number 1. It's the first attachment on Blackboard for today.